Hi friends, Ryan here with Ryan's Candles and Crafts, and welcome to the next chapter of Jojo's story. Last time, Jojo arrived at Dune Peak Village. The village is vibrant with the Lantern Festival, filled with music, lights, and the aroma of delicious food. Jojo, who is not fond of crowds, is drawn to the festival's warmth and magnetic personality of Mojo, a captivating dancer. Despite his hesitation, Jojo felt a sense of curiosity and connection, hinting at possibility of joining the festival in the future. Mojo invited Jojo to dance the next night, leaving Jojo with a small smile and a sense of belonging. Now before we get started on this next chapter, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, click on that notification bell to get notified on when we upload new videos, and don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below on what you think of the story. Now let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 6. Dancing Under Lantern Light. Jojo stepped out into the square, and the golden bubble rose with him. He smiled despite himself. The square, still dappled with lantern light, was quieter now. Vendors were setting up trays, someone tuning a stringed instrument by plucking the same note over and over until it sat right between the buildings. A few early birds swept the stones where last night's dancing had scuffed patterns into the dust. Jojo stood at the edge of the square and just watched. Watching had always been easier than joining. But the longer he stood there, the less the square felt like a stage and more like a kitchen. Somewhere busy and purposeful where you could always find a task if you looked for one. "Traveler!" a voice sang out, bright as first sunbeam over the ridge. "You made it to morning!" Mojo. He arrived not walking but gliding on a rhythm of his own steps, feathers a fresh scrubbed blue that caught the light like crystal clear ocean waters. The copper of his beak shone, and where there were 3 stray feathers down at his crown sticking just proudly enough that Jojo suspected that they were deliberate. "I make it to most mornings," Jojo said and surprised himself with a little joke. Mojo's smile widened. "You do, and today we try again." He tipped his head toward the square. "Smaller crowd, softer song. It's easier to learn a step when no one thinks it's a performance." Jojo looked quickly at the satchel. I really should keep moving. There's a delivery." "And you will," Mojo said, gentle and certain. "But first," he flicked a wing toward the stone. 2 steps, a pause, and a laugh. Then the path will be lighter under your feet. Trust me." The bubble drifted between them and pulsed once, like a little heartbeat saying yes. Jojo let out a breath he hadn't noticed he was holding. 2 steps, he said. "Then I go." They went to the edge of the square, where a fiddle had found a melody slow enough to move to. Mojo stood beside him, so they looked out together, and showed him the smallest pattern. Left, right, still. Left, right, still. "You don't push the beat," Mojo said softly. "You let the beat push you. It's like wind when you were a chick. You learn just enough, and it carries your feathers the rest of the way." Left, right, still. Jojo's claws clicked softly on the stone. A pair of chicks trundled by with a stack of paper lanterns bigger than they were. One tripped, the lanterns teetered, and without thinking, Jojo reached to steady the stack, the new step carrying him closer. Steady, steady. The chick's eyes went round. They burst into giggles and ran off. Jojo realized his shoulders had loosened. The step wasn't a performance. It was just a way of moving through a morning. Mojo gave a small, pleased hum that felt like approval without applause. "There it is," he said. "Your body knows more than your fear does, Jojo." Jojo's beak quirked. "Don't tell the fear, it gets jealous." They practiced until the sun cleared the ridge and threw light across the entire square. By then, vendors were calling soft greetings. Someone passed with a tray of warm seed cakes and nodded at them, and the smell of roasted nuts came on sure feet. Jojo learned 3 patterns. The small, left, right, still, a turning step that felt like dancing a circle on the ground with his toes, and a clever foot cross that made him laugh the first time it worked. Each was modest, a stitch rather than a tapestry, but put together, they made a line of movement he didn't have to think into existence. It arrived under him when he needed it, the way a path sometimes appears when you crest a hill. Mojo didn't press for more. "Save the rest for the night," he said. "The lanterns are friendlier than the sunlight. They make room." Jojo touched the satchel again. The warmth met him, steady as ever. "I still have to deliver." Mojo's gaze dropped. Not nosy, just aware. "I won't ask where or to whom," he said. "But I will offer this. The Dune Peak road split like a braid south of here. Many travelers choose the middle path because it looks most certain. It is also one with the wind pockets that steals hats and courage." He tipped a wing. "If your bubble nudges left instead, listen to it." Jojo glanced at the bubble bobbing near his shoulder. It glowed with a bright, contained light of lantern that hasn't yet been released. "It tends to be right," he said. "Then we agree," Mojo said lightly. "And that counts as 2 steps in time." They parted for the late morning. Mojo had places to be, the festival's rehearsals, the setting of lines only performers were allowed to touch. Jojo had a path to walk himself, even if it wasn't leaving yet. He used the time to learn more about Dune Peak Village in the daylight. The slope of the alleys, the extra stone at the base of doors that kept rain from rushing in, and the way the festival workers checked each lantern knot on the lantern ropes. He bought a small packet of roasted chickpeas and made his way around the village square. The bubble led him to the far end of the square where a table had been set up with papers, brushes, and little pots of bright ink. A sign handwritten in careful strokes read, "Write your wish, let the light lift it." Young birds and elders alike leaned over the paper, tongues peeking out in their concentration. Jojo stood, watching, until an elder at the end looked up and gestured kindly. "You too," she said, "even if it doesn't go up yet." He took a small square piece of paper, dipped a brush, and thought. Wishes had always sounded to him like something others were better at making. He tried a few words in his head and found out that each one was similar to the others. In the end, he wrote only this: "Safe arrival, honest heart." He blotted the ink and tucked the paper into the satchel, next to the cup. The warmth seemed to accept it without hesitation. Afternoon drifted into evening, the way music slides from one song to the next. Lanterns woke. Their chords thrummed very softly. The square filled. Jojo stood at the edge again, as he had the night before. But he did not feel quite like the same bird. The 3 steps he'd learned sat in his bones like friendly tools in an apron pocket. Drums arrived, a flute found them, and then Mojo stepped into the circle, not like a performer appearing, but like a story beginning just where the last one had left off. Mojo danced, not the long, carved sequences Jojo imagined a professional would favor, but a chain of simple phrases done so clearly they looked new. He made room in the circle, room for music, for mistakes, for someone else to step in without feeling like an intruder. Now and then, he'd catch Jojo's eye and echo the tiny left-right still they'd practiced, as if to say, "There you are. Bring that when you're ready." Jojo wasn't ready yet. Or so he thought. It happened the way the first step had happened that morning, because someone else needed a hand. A chick burst from the line of the onlookers, clutching a ribbon tied to a lantern that had slipped low and was threatening to drag in the dust. The ribbon tangled the dancer's foot. The chick squeaked. The dancer flailed. The lantern bobbed like a confused firefly. Jojo moved, left, right, still. He was there, steadying the lantern with both wings, lifting the ribbon just enough to clear the dancer's step. The crowd's concern turned into collective laugh of relief, and the music never broke. Mojo slid to Jojo's side, caught the moment, and folded it seamlessly into the dance, turning the rescue into a phrase. Left, step, sweep, place. Jojo found himself doing it again and again, because that's what the circle called for. He was inside the ring now, not at the center, not under a spotlight, just another piece in the pattern which felt better than he would have guessed. The bubble hovered above the far edge of the circle, bright as any lantern. It didn't need to be near. It understood this was not a path but a place, and the place had accepted him. When the song ended, the applause came down like warm rain. Jojo stepped back out of the circle quickly, heart racing, claws tingling. Mojo followed more slowly, holding the crowd with that easy smile and then letting them go as he could lean against a stall beside Jojo. "There," Mojo said softly. "You danced, and no feathers were harmed." "I did," Jojo admitted, still a little stunned. He looked at his feet. I only helped. It wasn't..." "Helping is a step," Mojo said, and his tone made it clear he meant it. "We pretend dance is about being seen. It is about seeing. You saw what was needed." Jojo let that sit. They watched 2 more songs together. Between songs, Mojo answered the questions Jojo hadn't asked yet. Where he had learned, who had taught him, a traveling troupe that adopted him for a long season, why he came to Dune Peak Village every year. He spoke about the world like it was a room with many doors, and he found a key in his feet. "And you?" Mojo asked finally, eyes flickering to the satchel as if it were a person in their conversation. "How far do you go?" Jojo looked toward the dark where the road vanished. "Farther," he said. "The bubble hasn't faded. The brew is still hot. Someone needs it." Mojo nodded, serious now. "Then tomorrow you travel. Take the eastern path. The middle one sings sweet but steals shoes." He hesitated and added lightly, "I might walk a little with you, if you don't mind a companion who narrates his own footsteps." Jojo's first instinct was to say no, but he remembered Rainfeather Pass. Eli's chatter had grated until it saved him. And then he remembered how the circle had opened tonight when he stepped in, because someone else needed him to. "I wouldn't mind it," he said, and meant it. "Good," Mojo answered, relief hiding inside his playfulness. "We'll leave the first light in the morning." They stood in friendly silence. A new cluster of lanterns lifted overhead, each carrying a wish written by a careful hand. Jojo almost reached for the paper tucked in his satchel to tie it onto a string and let it go. But he found he didn't need to yet. The wish was already traveling with him. When the square finally began to thin, Mojo walked Jojo back toward the spice stall's nook. They said goodnight and would see each other in the morning. Jojo laid down with the music still thrumming in his ribs. Sleep found him faster this time. Dawn smelled like steeping tea and clean stone. Mojo appeared with 2 small cups from a vendor who believed mornings deserved to be sweet. They drank standing up, shoulder to shoulder, watching the first blush of light hit the ridge. "Left path," Mojo said, tipping his beak toward the road that sloped out of Dune Peak Village like a promise. "We'll take it slow until the bend." As they walked, the village breathed behind them. Lanterns settling, vendors opening shutters, the square murmuring awake. Jojo did not look back. He didn't have to. Dune Peak Village had gotten into his feathers. It would travel with him in the same quiet way the Sunrise Brew traveled. Warm, living, making room. Mojo kept pace with easy stride, humming a pattern Jojo realized was their steps set to morning. Left, right, still. He found himself matching it without trying, and the road liked it enough to feel smoother underfoot. A mile out, the village sounds folded into the day's larger rustle. The path split where a strand of juniper split the ridge. The middle road looked the most certain, straight, wide, well beaten. The right curled downhill toward a shimmer that might have been heat or mirage. The left ducked shyly toward a run of boulders and a line of wind-shaped grass. The bubble drifted left. Mojo smiled. "Wise friend," he said to the light. They turned. The path narrowed at first, then spread into a band of packed sand that didn't stick to their feet. The ridge broke just enough to show them the long sweep of country ahead. Folds of low mountains, glint of water, a far thread of pale road that would someday be theirs. Jojo touched the satchel with the brief reverence of someone checking both a responsibility and a comfort. The heat that answered felt exactly right for this hour. Enough to say we're going the right way. "Tell me about your village," Mojo said after a time, not prying, just opening a window for conversation. Jojo did. He spoke of Cafe Perch and Miss Brindle's way of making a morning brave, of Mr. Tallow and his raisin bread that made the square smell like childhood, of the old Perch Gate and the feathers pinned there by those who left and those who wanted to remind themselves they could. He did not talk like a storyteller. He talked like a courier, delivering images carefully so that they arrived intact. Mojo listened with the same attention he gave a beat, nodding now and then in time with places where Jojo's voice warmed. Somewhere ahead, the road would change them again. Test what the festival had taught. Ask for a different courage than the bridge or the grove or the pass. For now, Jojo had a companion who made the space beside him feel less like exposure and more like company. A bubble that knew when to lead and when to watch. And a cup of Sunrise Brew whose warmth had said, "Strength for the one who needs it, courage for the one who carries it." He didn't know what was yet to come, but his steps felt honest, and his heart did too. And that was enough to keep going. And that, my friends, is where we will leave Jojo and Mojo in the story today. Put down in the comments below, what do you think is going to happen with Mojo and Jojo on their journey as Jojo continues his journey to deliver the Sunrise Brew that is intended for the traveler? So as you can see, as we've gone through this video, we are really just over halfway when it comes to finishing up this diamond art painting. This chapter was a little bit longer, but I really did enjoy getting this one written. I think it gave a lot more detail into the story and what's to come next. As we go through and complete this picture, you will start to see a lot more of multi-placing, which really did help speed up the process. The next book, or well, the next story is going to be on Mojo, so we'll kind of see what happens with Mojo throughout the rest of this story and how that ties into the next story. If you'd like to get involved in the process of one of the stories that we're going to be doing here on the channel, there's a link down in the description below for Patreon, and there are a couple different tiers that are available for you to get involved in the story making process. I would really appreciate if you would like to do so. Go ahead and click on that link down below and sign up, and then we'll collaborate together. And that is all we have for today. As always, light a candle, pour a coffee, and let's keep crafting.